model, and so he's worked with us and attended all our classes and been a wonderful partner. And then I already introduced myself. I'm the capstone instructor. So the student presentation, and we'll get to this, we'll go through the process we use, and it breaks down into these different categories. The model we use for this course, generally, whoever the client might be, we want to engage with them, which we call stakeholder consultation. Because it's an energy-based project, we often are looking at the benchmarking and also do some assessments for what is the energy need, what's the problem we're solving. Then they get into solution-based engineering energy analysis, which include designing different types of systems, considering different types of designs, modeling them using advanced tools, and understanding how they perform, what they would cost, all those sorts of things. And then finally have some sort of implementation strategy. How are you going to make this work? And so we're going to be talking about that when we get to the student portion of the project, of the presentation. So looking at this project, we'll also discuss the project, and at the back end, after the presentation, have a chance to sit down with folks and have an expert panel discussion. So Alan's going to help moderate that. We'll be sitting here, so we hope that people that come for the presentation, you're welcome to stay for the after discussion. There's larger plans to consider how this model could be scaled up and applied in a broader sense to do some of the important work that we need to do to transform our energy systems. For the expert panel, we have Lieutenant Governor Zuckerman, Secretary of State Copeland Anzus, I guess myself, I'll be on there. We also have Brian Sewell from the Department of Building General Services, Eric Bailey, who is the village manager, the Village of Johnson manager, who was our partner on this program and was very supportive. Sydney Roblar, who is here from the Department of Labor, who's also interested in workforce needs, I think, within this energy transformation space. And also Henry Pentland has offered to be the student representative on that panel. So we'll have a discussion after the project to talk about this and the impact it could have in a more broad sense. Okay, so we're at this portion, and I guess we would do a welcome message, and we can move on to the next speaker. So President Smith, if you don't mind coming up here, thank you for being here. I guess this would.
Well, thank you very much for having me here today. I really appreciate this. It's been my 5th day on the job, so this is something that I have to know about, and I really appreciate all the effort and everything that you've done. I don't know you individually. I hope I will. I'm staying in the dorms, so you can stop by. Actually, don't stop by. The Vermont Tech Campus of the Vermont State University has been the leading higher education institution in the state of Vermont for workforce development, particularly in the area of emerging energy efficiency and renewable energy sectors. We do a lot on this campus. For anybody that doesn't know this, I mean, in manufacturing, in other areas, we just do a lot, and we do a lot in this area as well, as the students, as you will be impressed with these students. The Renewable Energy Capstone Project clearly demonstrates VTSU's high educational standard and commitment of service to Vermont communities. I'm particularly proud to be associated with this university. It is important for the state of Vermont. It is vital for the state of Vermont. And these students are our future here in this state. So congratulations to all of you for your projects, and I really appreciate what you've done and what you will continue to do for the state of Vermont. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so the next speaker is Lieutenant Governor Zuckerman. If you want to come up and add some words to the discussion. Thank you very much. It's nice to meet you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you as well. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and apparently my speech will be a little bit longer than the president's, but I hope you don't get too too bored with it, where is the button for switching to the next slide?
Slides right there.
Okay, great. So I just want to thank you, Professor Kidder, for the opportunity and everyone here for the warm welcome. And also thank you to the renewable energy students for inviting me to speak here at the capstone event. Today I'm going to speak about some reflections on the Vermont energy economy, how we can improve our energy system to both save Vermonters money and make our system more resilient as we face the consequences of climate change. I plan to speak about a few emerging technologies that could be included in Vermont's comprehensive energy plan. But first I want to focus a little bit on some of the economic realities of emerging technologies in our environment. Currently, Vermonters spend more than $2.3 billion on energy services, and that continues to climb as prices increase in transportation fuels and heating oil. Shockingly, more than 1.7 billion of these energy dollars leave the state, thus creating lost opportunities for our economy. We need to keep those dollars working for the Vermont economy, and a real opportunity is the $1.3 billion or more that Vermonters now pay for imported petroleum products. The Vermont Comprehensive Energy Plan, I guess that was actually the slide I was supposed to have up. The Vermont Comprehensive Energy Plan needs greater emphasis on a variety of emerging technologies. This includes diversifying our fuel sources, such as hydrogen or ammonia. For instance, ammonia, when produced from renewable sources, could be an emerging viable carbon-free alternative liquid fuel for farm machinery, as seen here, with me driving my tractor on the farm, heavy-duty and light-duty vehicles and automobiles. With relatively minimum engine modification, today's combustion engines can be converted from mechanically actuated pistons and valves to advanced electronically actuated pistons and valves at a relatively low cost. This is an area that would mean more decent paying mechanical jobs for Vermonters, while helping farmers and truckers maintain the power and durability they need. There are hundreds of companies in the ammonia energy field that could partner with Vermont Technical College and the Renewable Nations Institute to make this an area of hub research and technology. As Vermont seeks to achieve the installation of over 300,000 cold climate heat pumps by 2050, as referenced in the 2022 Vermont Comprehensive Energy Plan, heat storage will become increasingly critical to manage the electric grid stability and reliability during the coldest days of the year when heat pump efficiency is reduced. PCM-based modular thermal storage and heat exchangers may be a solution that can provide a reliable backup heat source for cold climate heat pumps. This type of storage will become increasingly important as we electrify more of our heating. Theoretically, it will allow us to build up heat energy reserves during the day in order to reduce electrical demands on a cold winter night. We need to be aware that as we research these new technologies, we need to ensure these types of technologies are developed in ways that minimize the potential downsides, such as reliance on toxic substances. We know years ago, NASA started developing new generation of encapsulated high-performance PCM-based modular thermal storage and heat exchangers, and they can be a part of this research to provide reliable backup heat sources for cold climate heat pumps. Now, as the petroleum sector, more than half of Vermont's electric power is sourced, in the petroleum sector, more than half of Vermont's electric power is sourced from out of state, as in the petroleum sector. Today, Hydro-Quebec alone provides over 25% of our electricity. Canadians pay a federally subsidized rate of 6.52 cents per kilowatt hour Canadian for their electricity from Hydro-Quebec, while Vermonters in the residential sector pay an average of 20.15 Canadian cents. While this is the lowest rate of any New England state by more than 4 cents per kilowatt hour, it is still well above the national average of 15.47 cents. One reason New England's electricity prices are so high is that we're over-reliant on natural gas imports and have insufficient pipeline capacity. Well, rather than expanding fossil fuel pipelines, we can invest in grid improvements, such as you see major grid line in the slide, to allow for distributed energy production, as well as to create the opportunity for a reverse flow of energy in our transmission. This will allow us to use the massive offshore wind power that's coming online off of Massachusetts and Connecticut, and we can use that power in concert with Hydro-Quebec power if we can run power more both directions. When the wind is blowing, Canadians could use our wind power, and when the wind is dormant, we can use the electricity generated by hydropower, thus taking advantage of two low-cost sources without having to pump water uphill. They simply run less water through HQ when they're using wind energy. It's already stored instead of needing to use energy to pump it up. A modern grid will be much more dynamic than our current grid, which was built around a much more centralized power generation model. Wind energy prices are competitive, and they're also more stable than fossil fuel-based energy. In the words of Chad Farrell, founder and CEO of Burlington-based Encore Renewable Energy, Grandpa's grid has got to go. Now, vehicle-to-grid technology, or V2G, allows energy to flow from the grid to the vehicle when charging the vehicle, and vice versa to provide additional power to the grid. This allows V2G-equipped electric vehicles to act as energy storage systems when they're parked and connected, which can help improve the efficiency and value of intermittent renewable energy like solar and wind. Now, for comparison, a single vehicle battery can store far more power than a Powerwall assembly. Thus, V2G would make Vermonters far more resilient in the case of major power disruptions. And we know that due to heavier snow in 2022, Green Mountain Power and other utilities have experienced more frequent and more expensive outages than in history, and sadly this trend is likely to continue as climate change accelerates. Vermont is now demonstrating V2G technology with EV school buses at South Burlington High School, and Green Mountain Power is leading the nation in exploring resilient energy systems in Rochester and Panton as we speak. I certainly hope Vermont will work with other states to mandate that future vehicles sold in the state will be equipped with bidirectional charging capacity to increase this resilience for Vermonters. To quote the American Society of Engineers, all three major components of the electric grid, generation, transmission, and distribution, have an investment gap. To meet the latest state-driven renewable portfolio standards in generational infrastructure, this gap is projected to grow to a cumulative $197 billion by 2029, only 6 years away. Now, this investment shortfall is caused by a few factors: lack of federal investment, but also the current grid funding system that currently requires new energy producers, large solar fields, large wind areas, to actually pay for the grid upgrades to carry their power. But most energy innovators don't want to pay and make that investment as the first generator, because then other generators will be able to use that infrastructure without having made the investment, thus making the first out of the gate a more expensive investment, and therefore it's a disincentive that we need to get over. We know that this stalemate is causing great economic harm. For example, the 2018 California wildfire season, caused by a combination of extreme drought and faulty grid infrastructure, resulted in $148.5 billion in economic damage nationwide. It bankrupted PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric Company. The transition to a distributed DC and hybrid AC-DC microgrids, hybrid microgrid interconnections, and hybrid AC-DC power circuits, as shown in this slide, will be complex and expensive, and will require unprecedented federal investment as well as cross-sectoral cooperation. Now, we can tie all these issues together. As interim president, Mike Smith stated in his welcome message, and as I said as I entered the room, welcome to your another new job as the Fix-It man. Good luck, tough task, but I know you're up to it. But as he stated in the welcoming message, the Vermont Tech campus of Vermont State University has been a leading higher education institution in the state for workforce development and the clean energy sector with folks like yourself. Vermont needs the capacity of the Vermont Tech campus to address the climate crisis and to grow a robust in-state energy economy with thousands of high-paying clean energy jobs. We can seize the opportunities before us at this historic transformative moment for the energy sector as well as the Vermont State College system. For Vermonters and to attract others, we can create the economic hub that provides benefits of high-paying jobs in the energy efficiency and renewable energy sectors while building demand for Vermont State University and for building a more resilient Vermont for our future. Thank you, and congratulations to the capstone students.
All right, thank you so much, Senator Zuckerman. So let me go to the next, and I guess the next speaker is Secretary of State Sarah Copeland-Hanses. If you want to come up to the podium.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kidder. Welcome, everyone. It's exciting to be here. In case you don't know me, I am currently Vermont Secretary of State, but up until last year, I served in the legislature, where I was the leader of the Climate Solutions Caucus and worked on a great number of climate policies, many of which we'll be talking about here today. But all of them fit together to help create the landscape of the future that we need in order to put brilliant people like these young students to work to better our economy in Vermont. So thank you so much, Dr. Kidder, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. My brief words today will offer an overview of our recent climate legislation, but it's also going to highlight a few legislative actions that are aimed at accelerating Vermont's response to the existential threat of global warming. As a state representative, I was the lead sponsor of the Global Warming Solutions Act, and this is historic legislation, and it's historic for one reason, because it gives you and you the right to sue the state government if the state government does not meet our climate goals. By itself, the Global Warming Solutions Act does nothing except establish a climate council to create a climate plan. But the threat of that future action that could come about by our state government's inaction is the key, I think, to holding us responsible for making the change that we need to make. We need more targeted legislation, though, in order to make that happen, and so I'm going to talk about a few of those right now. S148, an act relating to environmental justice in Vermont, is a key foundational element of the climate work that we've done. Vermonters need a just and equitable energy transition. And so what does that mean in practical terms? I live in Bradford, I grew up in Corinth. Many of my neighbors can't afford their heating bills and often have to decide between using safer, cleaner heating sources or cutting down the tree in the backyard and hoping that their chimney flue holds up for the winter and they don't end up with a chimney fire. All Vermonters need representation during this transition to a clean energy future, and to clearly see that this future offers them real and tangible benefits and opportunities. S148 established a 17-member advisory council on environmental justice, and this council needs to assure that low-income Vermonters are not unfairly financially burdened in this transition. Secondly, just as a just and equitable energy transition needs to be understood in the concept of the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities, CBDR. CBDR is the principle of international environmental law establishing that all parties are responsible for addressing global environmental destruction, yet we're not all equally responsible. And I always think of this in a slightly different way. No one individual can fix climate change on their own by their own actions. And indeed, I've often heard people say, well, why should we be leading on this in Vermont? We're just a tiny drop in the bucket when you look at all of the environmental degradation that's happening around the world. No one of us can fix it on our own, but every one of us needs to do what we can and what we have in our power. Municipal fuel switching grant program. So this is another piece of key legislative advancement that would help us take leadership with targeted supports to the clean energy transition. On the national level, climate provisions of the Inflation Reduction Act are on track to stimulate $4 trillion in clean energy investments through 2032, including over $41 billion in grants to address energy insecurity or the deep energy burden that we have in our small communities here in Vermont. in our low-income communities. And on the state level, this targeted legislation is crucial. H153 was an initial step to support municipalities in the transition to clean heating fuels. And sticking with the municipal theme here, Act 172, an act relating to municipal energy resilience. These acts together are designed to help municipalities comply with our greenhouse gas emission reductions that were set forth in the Global Warming Solutions Act. Remember, each of us has to do our own part, right? Municipalities do their part, state does their part, we as individuals do our part. Act 172 supports municipal energy savings and fossil fuel reduction strategies for energy-burdened communities. And this is accomplished through an investment of $45 million in the Municipal Energy Resilience Program, MERP. MERP provides municipalities with up to $4,000 in grants for energy resilience, community capacity building, and up to $500,000 in grants for building renovation projects, weatherization, thermal efficiency, supplementing or replacing fossil fuel heating systems with more efficient renewable energy or electric alternatives. And Act 172 is a big start for Vermont, but it's not enough to address the needs for the more than 2,000 municipal buildings that we have. And I'm pleased to see that Renewable Energy Capstone is demonstrating an education-based and technical support unit as a viable option because many of our small communities just don't have that expertise on hand. And they're going to need help and support in the decision-making going forward. This, along with the concepts in the previous slide, has the potential to not only save greenhouse gas emissions, but it can also save us our property tax dollars, which is always popular with Vermonters. S5, the Affordable Heat Act. This is going through the legislature right now. A recent fluctuation in petroleum prices for heating oil and transportation fuel have resulted in a significant number of households experiencing energy insecurity. I saw it in my neighbors this past winter. Energy insecurity is sort of a construct that describes the interplay between the conditions of your housing, the household energy expenditures, and your energy-related coping strategies. And all of that results in the inability to cover basic household energy needs. Energy insecure, low-income Vermont households are routinely experiencing physical impacts, behavioral and related adverse environment impacts, and health and social consequences. And children in moderate and severely energy insecure homes are prone to food insecurity, hospitalizations, poor health ratings, and developmental concerns. The heat or eat dilemma is real. I see this in my neighbors. And it demonstrates the trade-offs that many low-income households have to make in meeting the necessities of life. At-risk groups are forced to decide between food and energy, often sacrificing one for the other. The Affordable Heat Act seeks to address energy insecurity in Vermont households. Now we get to the fun part, workforce development, right? So while S11 is not climate-focused legislation, it can clearly address the emerging demand for workforce training and economic development. This bill invests $84.5 million from state and federal ARPA dollars to address Vermont's workforce shortage. And the highlights of the workforce training include regional workforce expansion, work-based learning opportunities and training, funding statewide on-the-job learning and training experiences. Vermont Trades Scholarship Programs, $3 million investment, administered through the Vermont Student Assistant Corporation to provide scholarships for individuals enrolled in an industry-recognized training and certification program that leads to employment in high-demand labor sectors in Vermont. So here we are at a conclusion, right? Vermont requires a more focused effort on energy efficiency and renewable energy workforce development. The Vermont Clean Energy Industry Report of 2017, commissioned by the Vermont Clean Energy Development Fund at the Public Service Department, found that over 12,000 Vermont workers have full-time jobs in the clean energy sector. In total, including part-time jobs, over 19,000 clean energy workers. That was 2017. I'm quite sure that we've exceeded that now. And the concept for a technical support unit at the emerging Vermont State University is a key component to our energy future and to meeting the demands of our clean energy plan. I just want to close by saying I'm so pleased to have an opportunity to see your project presentation next, because I really do believe that it is in training folks like you to get out into our communities and help our municipalities save on their energy, adapt to new renewable energy sources, and make all of the changes that are necessary to get us off fossil fuel is an example of doing the one thing that you can do, right? I'm gonna do the one thing I can do, you're gonna do the one thing you can do, and I'm so pleased to be here today to celebrate the completion of your project. So, congratulations.
And I think Alan may be next, so have him come up here.
Thank you, John. Well, I've been in this field for probably 50 years now, and I've seen a lot of transitions. So I'll give you a recent history from 1998 through 2021, more or less. So I worked with the White House Millennium Council, the President's Council on Sustainable Development, National Town Meeting for Sustainable America, and other initiatives to really bring focus to the renewable energy sector. That was during the Clinton administration, and then I was actually introduced to the United Nations to be more focused on global issues and global workforce. So the issue we're facing right now in the global sector is twofold. One, investment. It's going to require a $131 trillion investment in renewable energy through 2050 to cap global warming at 1.5 degrees centigrade over what we experienced during the Industrial Revolution. That's a lot of money, and we're only investing about $2 trillion a year at the moment. We need to scale that up. The other issue is workforce training. Currently, we have about 9.6 million jobs worldwide in the renewable energy sector, and we need to train 100 million workers by 2050. And the education sector isn't prepared to do that, nor is the labor unions or other nonprofit organizations that do a lot of work in workforce training. So we have a big task ahead of us. Then I spent a number of years, about close to 9 years, doing research with National Science Foundation grants to really understand how to expand the labor force. And for this effort, I actually got a certificate of congressional recognition. So one of the things I've been active in for the last 10 years is really trying to address how to scale the workforce and get the higher education sector behind this initiative. That's been a difficult task, but where we're at currently is through the efforts of the City University of New York and through my efforts as the president of the Renewable Nations Institute. We have about 50 universities, close to 1 million students represented. Internationally, it includes universities in the European Union, the continent of Africa, Asia, and Latin America, and all throughout the US. So, we're hoping to really have a big impact. We're planning to launch this year. Vermont Technical College has been a part of that, and I'm hoping that I can transition the Vermont State University into that same effort. And in working with the United Nations and various agencies, there are really not only the 800 universities that are involved in an environmental program that are committing to education for sustainability across the curriculum. But there's also nearly 10,000 universities that are committing to take their campuses carbon neutral. Now, I want to focus on education. So constructivism, are two basic principles that really talk about the learning experience in the context of constructing a meaningful work product. There is a significant history and development of these two pedagogies over the last 200 years. And I think our students today will represent the best of what the practice is today. Now, what will a technical support unit possibly do here at Vermont State University? I could go on this topic for a long time, but I'm just going to highlight a few things. Today, we have AI technologies that are harnessed to really develop a GI-based digital twin so that we can understand every aspect of our energy system from natural resources to end use by various sectors. And as a consequence of this capability, we can really model the economic impacts of any decision that is made by industry, by government with federal policy, by corporations that are making investments, including investment banks and so forth. So it's a very important technology that is underutilized, and I think could be applied here at Vermont State University to help with decision support, not only across Vermont, but throughout the US and beyond. Also, we need to really understand industry standards and best practices. And our students today will demonstrate that with the Building EQ. It's an online technology that is basically powered by ASHRAE, which is an engineering society. They'll explain more about that. But they harness this particular tool to produce the equivalent of what is an ASHRAE level 1 energy audit and benchmark for a municipal building here in Vermont. We can also enable a distributed data collection system. There is a organization in Texas called Pecan Street. You might want to look them up, it's pretty interesting. But they have the largest kind of cooperative network of citizen researchers that are essentially allowing their households and their businesses to be monitored on a 24/7 basis, even on a 15-second interval, so they know exactly where their energy is coming from, how it's utilized, and how they can best take responsibility for their own energy usage to cut both cost savings and carbon emissions. And again, I'm missing a slide here, but so I want to say the conclusion for me is that I will pledge my time in the next 6 months to a year and really understanding how we can bring such a technical support unit here to the Vermont State University, how that can be a benefit to all stakeholders in Vermont, whether it's industry or government or low-income households that are experiencing energy burden. That will take a lot of work, but I think the outcome of this, I want to say, Vermont is already number 3 in the context of being innovative in this transition. And through a technical support center, we can improve upon that, but also have the rest of the world benefit from our work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think I'll say a few quick words and then we're going to move on to the student presentation. This first half of the presentation, as you can tell, is a very broad picture of where impact can happen. And the student presentation is just one example, but we intended this project to serve to sort of demonstrate that example. One quick word about the academic program that the students are in. This is a renewable energy program. We're actually going up for all of our engineering technology programs here at Vermont Tech are accredited by an organization known as ABET. Most engineering programs across the United States are accredited by the same organization. We're actually going up for ABET accreditation in renewable energy, so I wanted to mention that. We will be only one of, I think we'll be the fourth program in the nation that would be engineering accredited that way. And it helps students in the fact that a lot of the courses they take are engineering based. And this is a picture of Dan Costin, who's actually the director of the renewable energy program. I'm just the one who's teaching the capstone course this semester. And you can see through the list of courses here, the curriculum they get is a real blend of some engineering, of course math and science, as well as some management courses that help them, working in project work and stuff. I do want to mention too, Scott Sable is in the back row here. We also have an architectural engineering program here at the college that recently won a net zero certification, a national certification, and was highlighted in a national magazine. The architectural engineering program here at Vermont Tech has been here for almost 50 years, the 2-year program, and it was the first bachelor's degree we offered here. So my main point with this is to say that this university has some outstanding programs that are directed at building energy, and because we're talking about building energy, I just wanted to highlight that. We really do things here at this university that other schools in the state don't do, and the students will highlight some of that work. The renewable energy program shares a lot of curriculum with the architectural engineering program. So I'm going to quickly run through. They're going to talk, but I'll just quickly go through and just introduce the 6 students who happen to be in the class this semester. The first is Ryan Fish. You'll actually notice that some of these come from very close to Johnson, Vermont, so they're actually in their locale. He's majoring in this degree program, and he did his internship at Phoenix Solar. They all have completed internships after their junior year. And I think they all, I don't know if everyone sealed the deal on the job they're going to go to, but they have very good career prospects. Second student is Colby Supernaut from Duxbury, Vermont. He's also majoring in this, obviously, and he worked at Suncom as a solar installer this past summer. The third student is Nicholas Holbrook from Elmore. He's going to talk about cost analysis and some other things. I'm sort of rushing through these a little bit. I hope that's okay. But he did an internship at All Earth Renewable Energy up in Williston. And in fact, the head of All Earth Renewable Energy, David Blittersdorf, is on our advisory board for the degree program. Tom Ferguson is from Deering, New Hampshire, and actually he went and did an internship outside of the state, I think in Alabama and some other places working in renewables last summer, so that was a good experience. Liam Henshey's from Morrisville, Vermont. He's another one of the sort of pseudo-Johnson locals, and he also worked at Suncom last summer. And I think lastly, if I've counted right, it's Henry Pentland from Heartland, Vermont. I knew this would work well because they did an energy modeling course last semester, and I remember Henry looked at the Heartland Middle School where he'd gone, and he did a whole project around trying to incorporate solar into the Heartland Middle School. So I knew we had a really good skill set to go ahead and do that. So without further ado, I want to let them come and talk about their project. So why don't you all come up here and get started. And thank you for all the introductory comments. It really sets the stage well. Those are just wonderful. So I can't remember who's first. Ryan is first. So then you want to stand right about here.
Well, hello, and thank you for your interest in this year's Renewable Energy Capstone Project. Our senior renewable energy class has collaborated with the Village of Johnson, Vermont for this year's project. This presentation provides an overview of the processes we use to complete assessments, designs, and modeling of carbon-reducing measures that can be implemented at the Village of Johnson, Water Light, Garage, and potentially other municipal buildings that may be in need for those upgrades.
Just do a down arrow.
Each year, the Renewable Energy Capstone course engages in senior-level students to apply their knowledge and skills to a project that provides service to a community. The course typically follows a methodology that includes 4 steps. The first step is stakeholder consultation, where the student team engages with the key stakeholders to understand the problem and define the need, the priorities, and the constraints associated with the problem. The next step is energy needs assessment, where the problem is evaluated in terms of energy consumption and production using industry standards and methods. The information obtained from this stage forms the basis for engineering design work. The next stage involves analysis and design, where students apply their engineering and design skills to identify and analyze solutions. This work typically involves evaluating energy technology options and using engineering analysis and energy modeling tools to assess performance and cost. The fourth step, for the 2023 capstone project, we used Vermont Act 172 and the Municipal Energy Resilience Program, otherwise known as MERP, as framework for the project. This project provides $45 million to energy burdened communities to reduce energy use and operation costs and curb greenhouse gas emissions by promoting thermal efficiency, fuel switching, and renewable energy in non-school municipal buildings. And the goal of the 2023 Renewable Energy Capstone Project was to provide a municipality with technical assessment and designs for energy improvements that could help with their application process for MERP funding. In the first stage of the project, we researched Vermont Act 172 to understand the policy and program objectives. One useful resource was a webinar hosted by the Vermont Energy and Climate Action Network, otherwise known as VCAN, at their annual meeting in December of 2022. Through this work, we developed an understanding of the MERP program and the roles of the state agencies, planning commissions, and municipalities. In the next stage, we reached out to the town energy committees, planning commissions, and municipal staff members to introduce ourselves and inquire about potential projects. To limit the scope, we initially selected towns associated within the Vermont State University campuses, which are Castleton, Johnson, Linden, Randolph, and Williston. We also consulted Efficiency Vermont's 2019 Vermont Energy Burden Report, which is considered in the funding selection processes. From this initial research, the town and village of Johnson, Vermont stood out as a good choice for our project. The Johnson community had a high energy burden rating. They had municipal buildings that needed upgrades, and the village manager and the planning commission were very supportive of our proposals. Our next step was to meet with the town staff and representatives from the Lamoille County Planning Commission, and from there we planned a site visit to see the buildings and consider next steps. From this process, it was decided that the student team would focus on the one building, the Village of Johnson Water and Light Garage.
After we identified a building for the project, the next step was to complete an energy needs assessment. For this work, we applied ASHRAE standards and methods. ASHRAE is a professional organization for heating, refrigeration, and air conditioning engineers with national standards for these types of systems. These standards are taught at our university engineering courses, and Vermont Tech also has student ASHRAE chapter that attends the national conference each year. ASHRAE has a web-based tool, Building EQ, that can be used to organize information about building energy and benchmark performance. For this project, we chose to adopt Building EQ as the platform for building information. The energy needs of a building, of an existing building, can be first assessed by using fuel bills and electrical bills. For this project, the Village of Johnson contacted the electric utility, the fuel distributor, and approved them to provide information to our team. This was compiled and analyzed to determine the annual BTUs of heating energy and the kilowatt hours of electrical energy consumed by the building. The next stage of the assessment required a site visit to gather information about the building, including the structure, the heating and cooling systems, the lighting, and other electrical loads and energy systems. During our initial site visit, our team was able to collect some information, but a second site visit was needed to interview the facility users, obtain more building information, and complete some physical space measurements. The picture on the right is from the second site visit and shows some of the student team with the Water and Light Department foreman, Nate Brigham, in the background, and Tori Helwig from the Planning Commission in the foreground.
So when considering investments to improve energy consumption and efficiency in a building, it's helpful to use benchmarks to compare the need and potential benefits. To get an idea on how efficient the recommended garage is currently operating at, we started off by looking at the building's energy use intensity, EUI for short. This is a metric that's used to determine a building's electrical and heating usage compared to its square footage. This gets separated into two different categories between the energy that is consumed on site and then the energy that is traced back to its source. For this, we consider the site EUI for our analysis. And before I start saying anything, that 90.1 is actually a false value. We recently had a thing we had to quickly correct, so the number I will list is the more accurate representation. It's not that bad, I can tell you that. But we can use the EI as a benchmark to compare one building to another. We were able to obtain an initial value looking at the garage's electrical and fuel bills and found that the building has a site UI of 67.6 kBtu per square foot. For our final report, we'll use building EQ to complete this assessment for a full official value rather than these just calculations. For comparison, the Energy Star ratings from the EPA provide EUI values for different categories of buildings. Unfortunately, there is not a defined category for a municipal garage, so the closest EUI value reference was under the public service category and in the other functionality. This gave us a site EUI of 40.2 kBtu per square foot. Compare that value, the EUI values with what our building is operating at. This is a 68% greater than what we should be theoretically experiencing. For comparison purposes, it would be helpful to have EUI values for other municipal garages in Vermont to see not just how Johnson is, but across the entire state.
After obtaining information from the site visit and the energy audit process, the team began considering different options for the building that would reduce carbon emissions and end up lowering the energy costs. The team decided to focus on improving the thermal envelope, the lighting, the heating system, and the solar PV generation. After developing initial engineering designs for these systems, they are analyzed using two different energy modeling tools to determine performance and cost. As you can see, the HAP modeling as well as the helioscope, and the following slides will provide more of an overview of this work. This building is a repurposed steel structure from the 1960s with an open floor plan that includes one small office and bathroom. The footprint is 78 by 57 feet and it includes 4 garage doors on 3 sides of the building as well as 2 other entrances. The existing building has poorly insulated walls and a roof that the municipality had been exploring plans to replace while retaining the frame and floor. An engineering firm inspected the building in 2022 and noted issues such as the condensation and infiltration. On our site visit, we noticed the roof leaks as well as a major lack of ventilation. A full building design was outside the scope of this project, but to model the thermal energy performance, we assumed that the walls and the roof would be replaced. We used the engineering report as a guide and also consulted the Vermont Commercial Energy Building Standards when considering an improved design. This slide shows the existing walls and the roof with proposed designs. The R value of the new wall and roof design are almost 3 times higher than the current structure as it stands. This is important as the R value is the capacity in which insulating materials resist heat flow. So the higher the R value, the better insulated the structure is. This design coincides with Vermont energy codes as the walls are supposed to be R13 plus 5 and the roofs are R60. This specific design of the walls with the Intello interior paired with the Mento exterior provides a vapor barrier to mitigate moisture and condensation, as the amount of condensation is a major problem in the original building design. This design of the walls and roof was used in the HAP modeling software to predict thermal energy performance along with the R values for the existing doors.
On our first site visit, we noticed a significant gap beneath one of the garage doors that was exposed to the outdoors, leading to unnecessary heat loss. The engineering report also noted air infiltration as an issue with the building. In addition, the building use inherently requires opening the bay doors periodically in cold weather, which could cause extreme air exchange. During our second site visit, we interviewed a staff member who provided us with valuable information, including the frequency with which the doors are being opened during summer months and the current state of the garage doors. We suggested 2 solutions to address this issue: sealing the gap by fixing the foundation and using a garage door sealed strip. And an addition of a new door with a higher R value would also be a great addition. If new walls and a new roof are installed, we can assume that the general infiltration will be reduced. However, air exchange when doors are open would remain. We discussed the designs that divide the building into zones to limit heat loss from the front bay doors, but were unable to study this option completely. For modeling, we used a single zone model and can apply a general infiltration factor to account for this heat loss.
So when considering improvements to lighting, the goal was to lower the energy usage while also lowering the annual cost. The current building has 32-watt fluorescent bulbs with a rated output of 3,000 lumens each. Industry standards for a garage building from the Illuminating Engineering Society handbook call for a lumen output of 50 lumens per square foot, and resulting in a total required lumen output for this building of 240,000 lumens. We considered different LED lighting options and decided on an 18-watt bulb that had less of a lumen output than the current bulbs with 2,700 lumens, but still produced enough light with 243,000 lumens to pass the requirement. These bulbs are compatible with the existing fixtures also, limiting the replacement cost. The lighting energy was modeled based on the building occupancy determined from the facility user interview. The graph on the left shows the annual operating cost and the annual energy usage. The replacement capital cost would be $450, but with the money you saved in the annual operation, you will make that money back in just under a year.
The existing heating system in the building is an oil-fueled forced air unit which emits heat from the top of the unit indiscriminately throughout the space. This style of unit is inefficient for a garage-style space such as this. One of the key requirements of MERP is that older fossil fuel-based systems be transitioned to renewable energy-based heating systems. When approaching designs for heating possibilities for the building, we looked carefully at the options and developed several possibilities. Firstly, when we performed our site visits, we made note of existing infrastructure to see if there was any existing ductwork or other HVAC hot water piping to make use of in our design. However, finding none of this, we were left to make our designs without the ability to make use of existing infrastructure. It was noted that the oil tank is inside the building so that oil could be replaced with biofuel potentially. Some of the options we considered were radiant flooring, biomass furnace heating, and biofuel switching of the current oil system, as well as incorporating heat pumps into a hybrid form into all of these options. The picture on the right shows myself and Nate Brigham inspecting the nameplate on the heating unit. For our final design, we elected to go with biofuel switching of the current oil system, while adding air source heat pumps to supplement heat during the fall and early spring months. For number 2 oil-based heating units, they are capable of being blended with up to 20% biodiesel. A heat pump works by transferring heat from a low temperature source, such as outdoor air or a water source, to high temperature destination, such as a building's interior, using the refrigerant cycle and a compression and expansion process. The efficiency of a heat pump is determined by the difference in the temperature in the air it is drawing heat from and where it is being delivered to. In the coldest winter months, the heat pumps would be rendered inefficient, and so the building would then rely on heat from the existing oil heating unit with a biodiesel mixture. In designing our model, we based off our data by using oil heat for 2 months of the year, heat pumps for 7, and no heat through the warm summer months. It is also worth noting that this building will not be cooled at any time, as is the case currently.
right. So ventilation is one of the major components that benefits not only the health of the building, but also the health of those working inside it. Having a building without ventilation can lead to some pollution problems, such as increased mold growth, large amounts of condensation, or even potential buildup of toxic chemicals such as carbon monoxide. Now the reason I bring this up is because as the garage currently stands, there is no ventilation system installed into the building. The main venting option that's being currently used right now is just opening the garage doors. And while this option certainly works, there are two kind of standout issues along with that. During the summer, leaving the doors open can lead to high amounts of humidity exposure, especially when it's extremely humid out. And during the winter, this can lead to excessive heating usage, as once those garage doors open, all that heat is just gone, flushed right out. And so, looking at the building's square footage and working under ASHRAE standard 62.1 requirements, the current building should require around 4,245 CFM, which CFM that unit stands for cubic feet per minute and is the most commonly used unit for airflow and ventilation in the US. As you probably tell whenever you're at a hardware store with an AC unit. After looking into different options available, one of the best options is to use an energy recovery system. These systems not only pull fresh air into the building, but also exhausts the stale air from inside and use that exact same air to actually heat the air coming into the building, making it more energy efficient. And so, as it was stated earlier by Tom, one of the different programs that we used for energy modeling is called HAP. HAP stands for Hourly Analysis Program and is a program that was developed by Carrier Global, a US-based HVAC corporation. The program is notably sophisticated with a numerous amount of values and variables for inputs and can yield quite detailed results. The program is capable of combining our team's work into a single model. With this, we can compare and contrast our ideas with the current building to kind of gauge what kind of system changes we can make to improve it, such as increasing the wall thicknesses with our value, and even changing the heating systems. The table and chart shown on the right are an example of the types of output we can provide with this modeling software. The results can then be used to select specific heating and ventilation units. For this, we developed single zone models for the existing structure as well as the structure with new walls and new roof. To model the combination of the existing oil with biodiesel and the new heat pump system, as Liam was describing, we split those heatings between the coldest months of January and February for the oil furnace, and the remaining months for the heat pump. Again, there was no heating for the summer months, and the initial modeling does not consider any cooling, although a heat pump system is capable of providing such. Not surprisingly, the initial modeling shows that the new envelope would lower the thermal load, as we can see, about 25%. And the addition of the heat pump, assuming maximum usage of it, would increase the electrical power by our results around 5 times. And these initial results were actually used to size the solar array so that way we can offset that additional energy required, as Henry will describe later. We're still in the process of adding a ventilation system into the model, as it is a sophisticated program, and we'll be completing this work over the next week and presenting detailed results in our final report.
All right, so the Municipal Energy Resiliency Program and Act 172 legislation both have goals of reducing carbon emissions. And as solar is a 100% renewable source, the implementation of solar PV was a sensible option for us to consider. Now, this renewable energy could be used to power multiple loads: renewable heating through heat pumps, the ventilation loads, and also the energy recovery device housed within it, and of course the current lighting and plug loads that are present. So for solar, you can utilize it in multiple ways. You've got ground mount systems that are built upon racking, can be off-site or on-site, tracking systems that follow the sun to achieve maximum efficiency, roof-mounted systems, the most classic system, and solar can even be used to heat up domestic hot water by circulating fluid throughout the piping in the panels. But for our purposes, I stuck to focusing on a roof mount on-site option and also an off-site ground mount option. So for modeling, I used Helioscope, as Thomas and Colby mentioned. Helioscope is a solar modeling app widely used in the solar industry today in both commercial and residential solar modeling projects. It can generate many different variations of roof and ground mount systems accurately. It can model shading, and its database of both solar panels and inverters is enormous. So this makes modeling many different possible arrays easy, no matter if you're using an off-brand inverter or panel. And for each project you create, Helioscope will generate an electrical one-line diagram, a shading analysis, and a lengthy report breaking down important information such as the system losses, the annual energy production, and system components. So these results basically can be used to generate a basic cost analysis in Excel on your own, which you will see. So, throughout the project, I ended up modeling multiple solar options. My first option was the rooftop of the garage, but this ended up being almost entirely shaded with the trees behind it. So I also thought about adding the array to the roof right across from the driveway, right across from the garage, but this roof included a rubber membrane which made adding solar not feasible without incurring extra costs. So pictured in the top right is my initial on-site rooftop model. I ended up locating it on top of a housing for a diesel pump located right behind the garage. So this location had a steel roof fit for solar, great sun exposure being right out of the way of the village garage's shadow. It's kind of pictured up there with the trees and the space model. And the roof was also decently south-facing as rooftop solar needs to be. It actually ended up being large enough to power 75% of the garage's current energy usage, but this would be fine if we didn't plan to make any fuel switches or add any electrical loads. So below that, you can see the second model is my preliminary model for when the system inevitably had to be scaled up to account for the added electrical loads from the heat pumps. So the adjacent town garage already buys into a community solar installation located on Gould Hill in Johnson VT. This is where the model is actually pictured. You can see the rows of panels above it. That's the Gould Hill. And they use this to power one of the other buildings on their property. So there was some space available at the garage on site to look at a ground mount, but the terrain was not perfectly flat. There were potential obstructions such as buildings, trees, and other storage equipment. So I ended up deciding that the Gould Hill addition was the best option. So overall, adding to the Gould Hill array will give us the flexibility to size the array as large as we needed. You know, the village garage is a very large building with only one heating zone currently. Heating it entirely with heat pumps throughout the winter would add on a very large electrical load. So having the system here, we could size it up as large as we needed. And with an addition to the Gould Hill array, we also wouldn't have to worry about shading obstructions and uneven ground. And quite importantly, there would very likely be an easy way to tie into the electrical grid directly here. So with our two hat models finalized, or with our single hat model finalized, we could get an accurate estimate of the energy required to heat the entire building with air source heat pumps. As air source heat pumps lose out on efficiency as the outdoor temperature gets extremely cold, I decided to model two solar options. The first one, pictured on the left, heating the building entirely with heat pumps all throughout the winter months. The second, pictured on the right, heating the building with heat pumps throughout the winter, apart from the coldest months of January and February, where the B20 oil mix would be substituted in the current heating system. So it ended up taking 66 megawatt hours per year to heat the building all year round with heat pumps in the extreme case, and 43 megawatt hours per year, including the B20 mix in the cold winter months. Now, in the top half of the figure, you can see the components used in the systems, each listed with their price and quantity, and an average installation cost per watt is included in order to fully complete the estimated cost for each system. And below are the stats on the two different models. We can clearly see the total yearly energy production for each model in megawatt hours and the associated cost per megawatt hour if you were going to buy this electricity from the grid. At 17.2 cents a kilowatt, this would come out to roughly $172 per megawatt. And we've also got the total cost that this system could save the village garage per year. And using this energy produced each year, we can calculate the equivalent in tons of CO2 emissions saved if this power was produced by a non-renewable source like the oil boiler that is currently there. And lastly, we have a theoretical payback period calculated by dividing the total cost of the parts and the labor by the money that would be potentially saved each year. Now, 10 to 15 years would be considered reasonable for a solar installation payback period, so with both of these systems coming in at 8, these would be well within range of reasonable.
For a project that includes the installation of heat pumps or a solar array, it is very important to examine the extra electrical load associated with these systems and the constraints of the utility transmission to handle this. These load additions may not be possible at locations where the local utility and transmission is at capacity. For Vermont municipalities served by Green Mountain Power, there are online tools available to get a preliminary assessment of grid capacity, which you can see in the photo to the right. For smaller utilities, such as towns' water and light utilities, this may be less straightforward to assess. For this project, we happen to be working with the Department of Water and Light, so they had insight into the utility constraints of adding electrical load into the building or electrical generation, either on-site or off-site, through a new grid-tied solar system. To understand how these installations align with grid capacity, the key parameters include peak demand of new electrical loads, peak output of a solar array, and other parameters that can be determined through the audit and modeling processes. For cost analysis, the first thing we considered was capital cost. For the building envelope, which consisted of upgrades to the walls and roof, would have a capital cost of $49,947 for the major wall and roof materials and does not include installation costs. For lighting, the cost shown is for the purchase of new bulbs at $450. We need to finalize the modeling results to understand the size of the heating system. Based on initial results, we would need a heat pump with a rating of approximately 250,000 BTUs per hour, with a very rough estimated cost of $25,000. For solar PV, the capital cost was dependent on the final decision from the recommended systems. For a 66 megawatt hour system, it would cost $92,633, while for a 43 megawatt hour system, it would cost $61,325. The operating costs consider life cycle operation and maintenance of these components, and we are still working on these values for the final report. The initial helioscope modeling did provide some numbers, and for the larger 66 megawatt hour system, the annual operating cost would be $879, and for the 43 megawatt hour system, the operating cost would be $568, based on an average $17 per kilowatt installed annual operational cost. From initial calculations of carbon reduction, the building envelope would result in a decrease of 20.6 tons of CO2 annually, and the lighting improvements would reduce this by 2.3 tons annually. Fuel switching to electric heat offset by solar PV can also result in significant carbon reductions, and initial estimates for the 66 megawatt hour system would reduce 31.5 tons of CO2 annually, while the 43 megawatt hour system would reduce 20.5 tons of CO2 annually. This cost analysis is still in process, and more detailed results and assumptions used will be presented in the final report. With this, we were able to help provide the municipality with a large amount of information that will come in useful. This includes the result of a full building EQ assessment, a recommended heating and ventilation system to install, a recommended lighting system to install, as well as performance rates and costs for the recommended installs to help make this municipal building more energy efficient as well as more affordable. The purpose of this project was to assist the town of Johnson with the proposal process to the Municipal Energy Resilience Program for funding. The results of that step will ultimately serve as a measure of this project's effectiveness and how to improve it in the future.
In conclusion, we completed a project working with the Village of Johnson and Lamoille County Planning Commission. This included a building EQ benchmark of the building's energy performance that can assist with the ASHRAE Level 1 energy audit required for the MERP applications. Our engineering analysis and design work proposed fuel switching with heat pumps and biodiesel, a solar PV to offset electrical load, and performance modeling with HAP and helioscope. Follow-up work will include completion of the modeling and cost analysis and a final report to be provided to the municipality. We hope this work will assist the town of Johnson if they choose to pursue funding under the Municipal Energy Resilience Program. Thank you.
So I guess we were gonna transition to a panel discussion to talk about this and you know, the narrow and broad context, but I guess we first wanna open it up for any questions if people had specific questions about the project right now that you might have. Which can also be part of the panel discussion because they'll be around. Yes?
So I have a question for you all. Did any of you consider looking at geothermal options? I noticed that this building is right near the Limoille River, presumably the water table is close by. That's always another source of renewable energy.
Yes, geothermal was
Oh, it's on. Just
a little closer. That's better. Geothermal was considered, but for the majority, air source is more common, and that whole area, as Eric definitely told us, is very ledgy. So we couldn't really have like a well source for groundwater, which would prove helpful for a ground source heat pump. So we did examine that option, but we didn't find that it came up as helpful as an air source would be.
I guess could you comment, could we model a ground source?
We certainly could model a ground source in the future, and that's an option we have for our final report. That's definitely something we can add into. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah.
First, well done. You guys did a really comprehensive job on all of your analysis for this project. I'm gonna guess a level 1 was picked because you can't really do a blower door on a garage. You're not gonna get to the escalator yet. And then 2, biomass pellets not picked. Was that because of the potential added labor cost to maintaining a system like that, and instead looking at biofuels?
Yes, we did entertain the idea of biomass furnace. We found a unit that had options. I think it had 3 different models. One had an output of 250,000 MBTUs, 500,000 up to 1 million. So there are certainly units out there that could provide that heat. But we found that it would be a bit more costly and a bit more labor intensive than we had originally intended. And with existing infrastructure with the oil heating system, we elected to go with the biodiesel mixture. We just thought it would be, you know, kind of easier for them to make that transition. And not that that couldn't be done in the future too, but this would be an easy, cheap start.
I'm ready to just sign off on the application now, so let's just get it in. I'm ready to green light it. Yeah, good work.
And I guess I'll just comment, because I think I remember you telling me this, consultation with the village manager might have impacted our decisions on some of these things, where they would ask, you know, that person, okay, what do you think? And so, that was a great question. You had a question up there, Nicole?
Thanks for running around. We might have a few questions in the chat as well. My question for you is, how many hours did it take you all to collectively put this together?
I hope folks on Zoom are appreciating this, because the microphone's all for you at this point. I guess we're recording this too. Want to address that?
Yeah, that's actually something that I'm currently working on. Currently, we meet twice a week. Once on Tuesdays just to get together, see how everyone's doing, and Wednesdays for a 4-hour lab. Most of our work is done during that lab time, and I'm currently making a work plan for hopefully future municipal buildings to follow and understand what it would take to go through the process that we went through, and that will be included in the final report.
Thanks for that. Are you coming down for the microphone? I'll bring it to you. We'll meet halfway.
We'll meet halfway.
You're getting it stepped in.
In your calculations of CO2 emissions and other greenhouse gas emissions, were you considering the CO2 emissions from pellets? Did you consider the CO2 emissions from the biofuel that you're mixing in with the diesel?
Yeah. CO2 emissions was one of the things that we wanted to address. We found that per gallon, I think it had a difference of about 2 pounds per gallon difference CO2 emitted per biodiesel. I think biodiesel had like 21 pounds per gallon of emitted CO2, while typical number 2 fuel oil had about 23. That's the number I found, so yeah, that's about all I've got for that. Sorry. We didn't look as much into CO2 emissions for the biomass furnaces. Our focus switched to the B20 option about halfway through the semester, and really that's where our efforts kind of went into. So I didn't focus further into the biomass emissions, but that's also something that we could look at for another alternative in the future. So.
I guess real quickly, I might point to Henry, would you comment just briefly about what are the assumptions in calculating CO2 emission reductions? Are those simple, complicated? Do they assume certain things, and how will you handle that?
We used a simple version, an online EPA calculator, but in that website it basically shows you the unit conversion that you go through, and it's not, I think there's like 3 or 4 units that you convert to. It's not incredibly complicated, but we just used the framework of the EPA's website and substituted whatever units we were using to switch to CO2 emissions. I think that's it.
I guess, and what I was getting at is it's a complex calculation because it depends what you're offsetting, where your electricity is coming from, and I think we'll try to take that into account and use some standards when we do it. But you can get different numbers doing it different ways. I think I see Scott up here. Yes.
So I'll echo, that was just an excellent job, very complete. One comment that you could react to or not, that the problem with some of the EUI numbers is they're on a square foot basis. And if I were to say, maybe not the public service buildings, but look at airport to terminals as a comparison, because one of the challenges we have in the building industry that you're seeing is high volume, low square foot buildings get a much distorted measurement compared to your typical building that might only have a 12-foot story. So it's just food for thought. I don't know what that was, it's not my field, but I know that much, that the volume of buildings is mattering a lot more now than the square footage used to.
Yeah, just briefly. So one of you had mentioned trying to set a standard for municipal garages. We're getting a lot of interest from towns across the state at the energy office for town garage projects within the municipal program. So I hope that this is going to be an opportunity to get some kind of step towards the standard, but definitely right that the square footage can be a tricky part of this. But yeah, I think I'm ready to just retire and turn over the work to you guys. So you did a really great job, and thank you for all your efforts.
Wonderful, Chris.
In your research, did you find that there were either areas where small changes in state or other supports in either information you can find online or subsidies for one or a different fuel or system, whether it's ongoing fuel or it's one-time system installation, would have shifted any of your outcomes or choices?
Who wants to answer that?
It's okay if there's no answer.
I didn't work on many of the sections that could involve, say, like a tax credit or something, but I know from previous work that, like, through the Inflation Reduction Act, there's potential for a 30% tax credit for the solar system. I'm not sure about fuel, or anyone has some data for that.
I believe with the fuel, it's all gonna depend on, government restrictions and everything that's added in. There's nothing currently that we found Like you said, no answer is better than an answer. So that's pretty much where we're at. We're waiting to hear if there's gonna be any more state or government legislation that would help shift that. It's actually something we're currently talking about in one of our sustainability classes.
All right. Any other questions? All right, we'll do a round of applause. Thank you very much. You both did a wonderful job. So I guess we were going to have finish up the whole session with just a panel discussion. Figure out a way to do that and close out the presentation. Eric.
No questions, just a comment.
Okay.
So I'm Eric Bailey, I'm the village manager for Johnson, the customer in this whole project.
Do you want to go to the podium so folks on
Sure.
Zoom can see you?
It's getting real now, class, isn't it? So I just wanted to get up here and thank this class and Professor Kidder and Alan Baer. This has been a great collaboration. When they approached me about this project, we would have said yes just to help, with the community learning project, with the VSU students. But we got real tangible benefits out of this. The comments from behind me are very encouraging. The audit they did is going to give me a major leg up on the energy audit required when I go after MERP funding, which is coming as soon as they release it. And we're forging ahead on a major upgrade, and we've got not only did their audit help us, but they brought forth a lot of very great ideas, and I'm certain that many of them will end up in our final product. And that's pretty awesome. I mean, learning how to do it's one thing, but actually implementing things that, real things before you're even out in the workforce is pretty cool. So I just want to thank everyone and congratulations.
Thank you.
One last question only because she put it on the chat. So Tori Helwig, who's from the Memorial County Planning Commission, wrote, curious about the solar array. Is it connected to an upgraded heating system? Do you want to read that and just address it? I think it's going to be grid tied. Yeah, you can address it.
So it's not connected, it's not directly connected to the upgraded heating system because it's fully off-site and would technically be adding on to this Gould Hill array. If it was on-site, it would be directly connected, and because of the way it is off-site, I don't think you can differentiate using it as a source, or the electricity you're getting, it doesn't differentiate where it's going. It's not like this solar array can only do the heating. It was sized for the heating load the new heating load with the updated R values, but it's not specific about where it's going, if that makes sense.
All right, thank you for all that, and thank you for the comments, Eric. It's been great working with you and your team there. And I guess I don't know how we should set up for a discussion. We can do it here in the front and pull some chairs into the front.
We have 4 chairs. Do we need to get some more?
I can get more chairs, yeah, I thought about that.
Okay, well, we'll make this transition to a panel. And John, I think you're able to introduce the panelists in the slide presentation.
Let's see if I can do this too. I think so. Okay, well, I just stopped
Yep.
sharing it. So
Well, if you can go back, yeah.
just a second. You guys can exit that. Anywhere you want. Let me see here. I'll just use these slides. All right, so our panelists, the expert panelists we're going to have a conversation with include Lieutenant Governor David Zuckerman. Thank you for being here. Also, Secretary of State Sarah Copeland-Hansis. My brother lived in Corinth for a little while, so. Cindy Robard, who's here from the Department of Labor. And also Eric Bailey from the Village of Johnson, who just made some comments. Brian Sewell, who made some comments, and thank you for being here too. Actually, we've never met, so I didn't realize that's who you were, but you were a key stakeholder in this whole thing.
Hair's a little longer now.
And Henry Pentland, who's going to be our student representative. And we have the Lieutenant Governor gathering chairs. Thank you for helping us with this. I can run across the hall. So Al, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing because I think we'll see this better. And then I was going to hit council.